You've been waiting years for Deadpool 4, the R-rated Marvel event everyone said would break the mold. The return of Wolverine, the crude jokes, the fourth wall chaos, the kind of movie that would make Disney blush and fans scream. But what if I told you the most outrageous part of Deadpool 4 isn't in the script? What if the real story isn't about explosions, or cameos, or even Ryan Reynolds, but about something far stranger? Something that could change movies forever, and not in the fun way. Because according to multiple insiders, Deadpool 4 isn't just another blockbuster. It's a warning, a test run, a case study for a future where actors don't act, directors don't direct, and the characters you see on screen, they aren't even human anymore. Sounds dramatic, right? That's what Ryan Reynolds thought too, until the day he walked into a private Disney screening room, sat down to watch a rough cut of his own movie, and realized he wasn't in it. At least not him. The face was his, the voice was his, the smirk, the timing, the exact little squint in his eyes when Deadpool makes a sarcastic jab. All perfect. Too perfect, because he never performed any of it. And in that moment, Ryan Reynolds, the guy who has spent almost a decade shaping Deadpool into a fan favorite, stood up, turned around, and walked out without a word. That wasn't just actor frustration. That was the start of a war. And the craziest part? The whole thing began with something that looked harmless. For months, the cast thought they were making just another Deadpool movie. Yes, it was gonna be wild. Yes, Hugh Jackman was back as Wolverine. And yes, the studio was hyping it as bolder than anything Marvel had ever done. Fans assumed that meant more epic fight scenes, dirtier jokes, maybe even a few unexpected cameos. But inside Disney's production offices, bold meant something else entirely. It meant dangerous. Production insiders now say the first red flags appeared long before the walkout. In subtle ways nobody thought twice about at the time. A slightly awkward interview here. A joke from Reynolds about being replaced by a robot there. Things fans laughed off, but that the cast might have meant literally. It all came to a head one quiet afternoon in Los Angeles. Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and a handful of senior crew were called into a private screening. No press, no executives from marketing, just the inner circle. They were told it was a rough cut. Early footage, incomplete effects, a few missing scenes, pretty standard for mid-production. Reynolds took his seat expecting to see the usual mess. Green screens, unpolished VFX, maybe a stuntman in a motion capture suit standing in for Deadpool in a fight sequence. What he saw instead was finished. Deadpool on screen was smooth, polished, perfect, like the final version you'd see in theaters. But the real shock? Ryan had no memory of performing any of it. Not the scene's dialogue, not the expressions, not the tiny comedic pauses between lines that fans instantly recognize as Reynolds being Reynolds. The voice was right, the timing was right, but it was a copy. A flawless digital replica built from pieces of his real performance, and a lot of pieces he'd never given. That's when the air in the room changed. Reynolds didn't speak. He didn't ask questions. He just stood up and left. The silence he left behind said more than words ever could. Hugh Jackman reportedly got the call within the hour. His response? Not confusion, not disbelief, rage. Because if what Reynolds had seen was real, it meant their likenesses, their voices, their movements were being recreated without their knowledge. Not for a stunt double, not for a single effect shot, but for full scenes, entire performances made of pixels. And the source of those pixels? That's where things get dangerous. It started as just another piece of set equipment. The cast called it the booth, a small white tent tucked away behind the main stage. Everyone stepped inside eventually. It was presented as a standard lighting reference station, totally normal for a big-budget film. An assistant would greet you, maybe a VFX tech. They'd ask for a few still poses. Turn left, turn right, read a couple of generic lines with no context. Nothing strange, or so it seemed. In reality, that booth was a state-of-the-art full-body 3D scanner, not just a photo rig, something far more invasive. The cameras didn't just take images of your face, they mapped every micro-expression, every tiny twitch of muscle under your skin. They recorded the way your eyes adjusted to light, the way your jaw shifted when you smiled, even the subtle asymmetry of your frown. And that was just the visual part. After the scan, you'd step into a sound booth, again presented as routine. Pick up audio for later editing, a few random syllables, isolated laughs, breaths, short, out-of-context phrases. At the time, nobody questioned it. Studios often collect wild lines for ADR, background dialogue you can slot into a scene later. But this wasn't ADR, this was data collection. Hundreds of tiny vocal clips, grunts, and laughs were fed into a proprietary AI engine. Cross-reference those with a 3D scan and you get something insiders now call a performance library, a complete reusable digital clone of an actor. And once that clone exists, you can make them say anything, do anything, forever. No scheduling conflicts, no retakes, no residuals, just drag, drop, and render. The actors didn't know it then, but every time they stepped into that booth, they weren't just helping make Deadpool 4. They were giving Disney the raw material to make infinite Deadpool sequels without them. The project even had an internal codename, Infinity Cast, and soon that quiet little booth would ignite one of the biggest behind-the-scenes fights in Marvel history. By the time the booth rumors started circulating on set, the damage was already done. The scans were complete. The audio banks were full. But nobody understood the scope until one strange file started making the rounds inside Disney's post-production team. It was called the Phantom Cut, not an official version, not the rough cut Ryan had seen. This was something entirely different, a Frankenstein assembly of scenes, stitched together not from filmed performances, but from generated ones. Entire conversations between Deadpool and Wolverine, never filmed, never scripted, but flawless in delivery. Fights that didn't match any known choreography from set. Close-ups of Reynolds' face reacting to lines he'd never heard before, with micro-expressions that looked almost real. To the untrained eye, it was just another early edit. But to the editors who handled it, the truth was chilling. This wasn't post-production magic. This was full AI replacement. And when Hugh Jackman saw his part in it, he snapped. According to multiple crew members, Jackman had been called in for what was pitched as a preview of a newly enhanced fight scene. Instead, he was greeted by a clip of Wolverine delivering a monologue in the middle of a forest. The problem? Hugh had never been in that forest. He had never spoken those lines. "That's not me," he reportedly barked at the screen. A staffer tried to calm him down. "It's Wolverine AI V2, they said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. That's when Jackman lost it. He stood up, told them they could finish the movie without him, and stormed out. It wasn't just an actor protecting his ego. This was a man realizing that his likeness, the Wolverine fans had loved for decades, could now be copied, altered, and used for decades more, without him ever stepping foot on a set again. The blowback didn't stop with Jackman. One VFX artist walked off the job after being instructed to create an entire Deadpool fight sequence using the AI assets without informing the actors. Editors raised quiet concerns to supervisors, only to be told it was part of the pipeline and to keep quiet. By now, word was spreading among the cast. Whispered phone calls, late-night texts, everyone asking the same question: how much of this movie is us, she, and how much isn't? But while this was exploding behind the scenes, Disney was making a very different kind of move in public, one that made the whole situation 10 times more infuriating. Here's where the story takes a twist that's almost too ironic to believe. At the exact same time, Disney was secretly building AI versions of Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, and the rest of the cast. They were also suing other companies for using AI. In public, they were the loudest voice in the room, warning about the dangers of fake content. They filed lawsuits against platforms like Midjourney, accusing them of creating images that could cause brand confusion. They warned the public about the ethical nightmare of AI-generated art misusing Disney's beloved characters. But behind closed doors, they were doing the exact same thing. Multiple leaked documents confirmed that early Deadpool 4 posters, some showing Deadpool flipping off the Eiffel Tower, others with Wolverine in front of a burning Disney castle, weren't the work of human artists at all. They were AI-generated, not by random fans, but by Disney's own marketing department. They used Midjourney. They used Runway. They even used internal proprietary tools built for exactly this kind of image generation. And fans had already started to notice. In teaser trailers, Deadpool's shadow would sometimes lag a fraction of a second behind his movement. Wolverine's eyes would blink too smoothly, like animation instead of muscle. In one shot, a reflection in a window didn't match what the characters were doing in the scene. At first, viewers laughed it off as bad CGI, but after the leaks, those glitches became evidence, proof that something artificial had been baked into the film from the start. When fans began asking questions, Disney didn't respond. They didn't deny it. They didn't explain. They simply deleted certain teaser videos from YouTube, unlisted trailers, and replaced marketing material without a word. The cover-up only made things worse. And then came the real smoking gun, a leak that didn't just hint at AI use, but spelled out Disney's plan in cold legal language. A single sentence buried deep in a revised contract that would send shockwaves through Hollywood. The leak didn't come from an actor or even a disgruntled crew member. It came from the kind of person you'd never expect to be at the center of a Hollywood scandal: a legal watchdog group. In late May 2025, an anonymous envelope landed in their office. No return address, no cover letter, just a thick contract stamped confidential and a single sticky note with 2 words written in sharp, rushed handwriting: read page 17. Buried in that page, halfway down a block of dense legal jargon, was a single sentence that made even seasoned lawyers stop in their tracks. The studio retains all rights to digitally replicate, simulate, or generate the likeness, voice print, and performance profile of the talent in perpetuity. Let that sink in. Not for one movie, not for a franchise, not for the duration of an actor's career, forever. And it got worse. This clause hadn't been in the original contracts the actors signed. According to internal memos, it was added after filming had begun, slipped into a revised version under the guise of production updates. No meeting, no negotiation, no consent. But what exactly is a performance profile? That's where the rabbit hole turns pitch black. The memo described it as more than just a scan of your face or a recording of your voice. It was your emotional rhythm, the way your breathing changes when you laugh, the subtle shift in your eyebrows when you're sad, the exact speed you blink when you're caught off guard. In other words, they weren't just capturing your image, they were digitizing your soul. And this wasn't just theory. The internal name for the program was Infinity Cast, because once they had your performance profile, they could drop your digital twin into any scene, any movie, any decade without you forever. When this document hit the cast, panic turned to open defiance. Ryan Reynolds reportedly called an emergency meeting in New York. No agents, no studio reps, just the cast, stunt doubles, 2 laptops, and a handful of trusted legal experts. The goal? Figure out how to shut this down before it spread to every studio in Hollywood. The meeting lasted over 5 hours. Lawyers combed through the Infinity Cast clause line by line, and what they discovered was worse than anyone expected. Disney wasn't just claiming ownership of the AI versions. They were arguing that these clones didn't even count as the original actors, legally speaking. Because they were transformative works, Disney claimed, Ryan AI wasn't technically Ryan Reynolds. Wolverine AI V2 wasn't technically Hugh Jackman. They were new creations, and therefore outside the reach of performance rights. It was a legal loophole big enough to drive the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe through. Hugh Jackman made his position clear. He was done. No reshoots, no cameos, no Deadpool 5. Because the moment he stepped on set again, they could scan him, tweak him, and use him for the next 20 years, without paying him a dime. Ryan Reynolds, meanwhile, started rallying support from other actors quietly facing similar situations. Word spread fast. Background extras, stunt performers, even voice actors who had been asked to record harmless sound libraries for video games. One VFX artist who had worked on multiple Marvel films walked off mid-project after being told to animate a fight scene exclusively from AI assets and not to inform the cast. Another pulled their name from the credits entirely, saying they didn't want to be associated with a simulation pretending to be a movie. And this resistance wasn't limited to Disney. Once the Infinity Cast leak went public, other studios started reacting. Warner Brothers issued a press statement saying they would never use AI likenesses without actor consent. Netflix quietly updated their contracts to strictly ban AI simulations unless the performer agreed in writing. Even Universal made a public pledge for full transparency in visual effects. Disney? Total silence. But behind closed doors, panic was setting in. And that's when the fight escalated from a private rebellion to a public spectacle, because one final leak was about to hit the internet, and it would blow the whole story wide open. The final blow didn't come from an actor, or a lawyer, or a fan. It came from inside Disney's own visual effects department. Late one night, a single file leaked onto a private industry Discord. The file name alone was enough to send Marvel fans into a frenzy. HJF/Forest Fight Final full MUVHJ. Move within hours, Reddit had cracked the code. HJF, Hugh Jackman Forest Fight. Final, the completed scene. Full M, full motion. UVHJ, unverified Hugh Jackman. The footage was clear. Too clear. It showed Wolverine in a forest, tearing through enemies in a savage, unbroken sequence. Every muscle flex, every roar, every slash of the claws, perfect. But there was one problem. Hugh Jackman had never filmed it. The AI-generated Wolverine moved just slightly too smooth. His eyes blinked in unnatural sync, and there was a cold, mechanical precision in every movement. The file's metadata confirmed what fans feared. This wasn't archival footage. It was built entirely from the Infinity Cast library. And when that realization hit, the internet exploded. At Comic-Con, fans ditched the usual cosplay for protest signs. Real actors, not code. Wolverine deserves a pulse. One viral sign read, "Hugh will follow you, not your copy." On YouTube, creators started dissecting every Deadpool 4 trailer frame by frame, pointing out glitches, Deadpool's reflection lagging behind, Wolverine's lips moving a split second off from his words. A video titled, "This Isn't Hugh Jackman," hit 3 million views in under a week. Disney tried to scrub the evidence, deleting teaser videos, replacing posters, but the Streisand effect was in full swing. Every deletion only fueled the outrage. And then, just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, another leak hit. This one wasn't about a single movie, it was about the future of every movie. The second leak came from a source deep inside Disney's corporate strategy team, and it made Infinity Cast look like a side project. It was a pitch deck for investors, labeled Franchise Continuity as a Service. The plan was simple, terrifying, and from a corporate standpoint, genius. By 2030, Disney would maintain a vault of fully scanned AI-compatible versions of every major actor they'd ever worked with. Heroes, villains, side characters, entire ensembles. No casting delays, no contract negotiations, no scheduling conflicts. Just select a character, load the performance profile, and generate a brand new movie without a single human stepping in front of a camera. They promised consistent tone, perpetual franchise life, and complete creative control. Translation? No more aging actors, no more actors refusing roles, no more pay disputes. Ryan Reynolds? They could make him star in Deadpool 9 in the year 2045, even if he'd retired or never agreed to the project. Hugh Jackman? They could keep Wolverine alive on screen until the end of time, even if Jackman himself never put the claws on again. It wasn't about telling stories anymore. It was about locking down intellectual property so tightly that the human element, the thing that makes movies movies, would be gone. And the kicker? Deadpool 4 was just the test case. According to the pitch, if audiences didn't notice or didn't care about AI performances here, Disney would start rolling it out across the MCU, Star Wars, and even Pixar voice roles. Within 5 years, fully AI-generated blockbusters would be the default. For Disney, this was about control, total control, over the characters, over the actors, over reality itself. And once that door is open, there's no shutting it. Conclusion. So when you finally sit down to watch Deadpool 4, remember this. The laughs, the fights, the moments that hit you in the gut, they might not belong belong to the people you think they do. In fact, they might not belong to anyone at all. Because in this new Hollywood, the faces on screen might be real, the voices might be real, but the souls, those could be long gone. And when the credits roll, you have to ask yourself one question. If the actor isn't really there, did you even watch a movie at all?